Craxon plunged the serrated blade into Nathan's abdomen, twisting the knife with a flick of his wrist. Blood gushed from the wound as Nathan howled in agony. "Tell me the location of your weapons facility, you stubborn ape," Craxon snarled, ripping the blade free. "Or this will seem like a tickle compared to what comes next." Nathan spat a glob of blood onto the Eliani commander's boots. "Fuck you," he growled through gritted teeth. "Humans don't break, especially not to Xeno scum like you." The interrogation chamber reeked of smoke, ozone, and the coppery tang of human blood. Shackled to the cold metal table, Nathan Jones had endured hours of torture at the hands of his Eliani captors. Burns, lacerations, and bruises mottled his bare chest. One eye was swollen shut, his breaths came ragged and sharp. But still he refused to yield. The location of the secret human weapons lab would go with him to his grave. Craxon slammed a fist on the table, his orange eyes blazing with frustration and grudging respect. "Your resistance is as impressive as it is foolish, human." He leaned in close, his fetid breath hot on Nathan's face. "The Eliani Empire will crush your pathetic frontier colonies. Project Apex will see to that, and Novus Prime will be the first to fall." Nathan's heart clenched at the mention of his homeworld, but he locked his jaw and glared back defiantly. Craxon would get nothing from him. Suddenly, a thunderous boom shook the facility. Alarms blared and panicked shouts echoed from beyond the cell. Craxon whirled to bark orders at his guards, and in that moment the door blasted inward in a flash of plasma fire. 3 hulking figures in powered combat armor stormed into the room, unleashing a storm of steel and flame. The lead attacker charged Craxon, a crackling power blade leaping to life in his grip. The Eliani commander shrieked in pain and crumpled, his severed arm thudding to the floor in a spray of cobalt blood. "About damn time," Nathan rasped as his rescuer shattered his bonds with an armored fist. "What took you so long?" The helmet visor slid back, revealing a grim but familiar face. "Had to shoot my way through half the base to reach your sorry ass," Marcus Jones replied, hauling his younger brother to his feet. "Tracker showed your vitals spiking. Thought we might be too late." Nathan flashed a weak but cocky grin. "Take more than a few Xenos with sharp toys to put me down." "Glad to hear it." Marcus unslung a plasma rifle and shoved it into Nathan's hands. "Now let's get the hell out of here. Exfil in 3 mics. We've got a war to win." As the rescue team fought their way out of the crumbling Eliani base, one thought pulsed through Nathan's pain-clouded mind. The Eliani had made a grave mistake. Novus Prime was in peril, and Project Apex loomed as an ominous threat. But they had failed to break him. He was free. And if those Xeno bastards wanted a fight, then by God they were about to learn a harsh lesson. Never, ever let humans take the gloves off in battle. Nathan blinked against the harsh medbay lights as he finished recounting his ordeal to the stern-faced intelligence officer. His wounds were healing well thanks to modern medicine and his own stubbornness, but the scars on his psyche would take longer to fade. "Project Apex, you said?" The officer tapped at his datapad, frowning. "We've intercepted chatter about some new Eliani weapon, but no specifics until now." Nathan struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the twinge in his bandaged abdomen. Craxon seemed to think it would be the end of us, said it could knock out our hyperdrives mid-jump, leave us dead in space. The officer muttered a curse. "If that's true, I need to brief the council immediately. Get some rest, Jones, you've earned it." He strode out, already barking orders into his comms. Nathan sank back against the pillows, exhaustion and painkillers pulling him toward blessed oblivion. But even as he drifted off, Craxon's words echoed in his mind. "Novus Prime will be the first to fall." He jolted awake to raised voices outside the medbay. The door hissed open and Marcus stormed in, his face like a thundercloud. "Those spineless cowards. They'd rather talk than fight." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "The council? What happened?" Marcus paced the room, hands clenching into fists. "They intercepted a transmission. The Eliani are planning to test Apex in the Novus system, but the damn diplomats want to negotiate, even with a gun to our heads." Nathan swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the medic's squawk of protest. Novus, and that's my home. We have to stop them. The military agrees. They're pushing for a preemptive strike, but the pacifists are blocking any action. It's a stalemate. An idea sparked in Nathan's mind, reckless and half-formed. What if we could sabotage Apex? Buy time for the politicians to talk, but still take that weapon off the board. Marcus paused, a slow grin spreading across his face. Little brother, I like the way you think, but you're in no shape for a mission like that. Nathan stood, his jaw set. Try and stop me. This is personal now. Marcus sighed. Fine, but you're not going alone. The brass assigned you a partner. The medbay door slid open again, revealing a familiar figure. Lean and dark-haired, with a perpetual smirk that set Nathan's teeth on edge. Rosenthal, Nathan growled. What's he doing here? Saul Rosenthal sauntered into the room, ignoring Nathan's glare. Is that any way to greet an old friend? We're going to be working together after all. Nathan turned to Marcus, incredulous. Him, seriously? You know our history. Marcus held up his hands. Not my call, but you two are our best infiltrators. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. Nathan looked back at Saul, remembering old rivalries and bitter arguments. But he also remembered the man's skill, his cunning and ruthless efficiency. All right, he said at last, holding out a hand. For the mission, we do this together. Saul grasped his hand, that infuriating smirk never wavering. Just like old times, this should be fun. As the two men began to plan their daring sabotage of Project Apex, Nathan pushed aside his misgivings. The stakes were too high for old grudges. The fate of Novus Prime, and perhaps the entire war, hung in the balance. It was time to remind the Eliani why you should never underestimate the tenacity of the human spirit. The Eliani dropship shuddered as it descended through Novus Prime's atmosphere. Nathan and Saul sat in the cramped cargo hold, disguised in the dull grey uniforms of Eliani maintenance workers. Nathan shifted, his healing wounds aching beneath the coarse fabric. Saul shot him a warning look. Don't fidget. You'll blow our cover before we even land. Nathan forced himself to stillness, his mind racing. Infiltrating an enemy stronghold was nothing new, but this mission felt different, more personal. Novus Prime was his home, and the thought of it under Xeno occupation made his blood boil. The ship touched down with a jolt. As the loading ramp hissed open, Nathan and Saul joined the stream of workers shuffling out onto the landing pad. The once vibrant colony sprawled before them, now choked with Eliani war machines and the bitter tang of oppression. A furtive hand signal from the edge of the crowd caught Nathan's eye. He nudged Saul and tilted his head toward a nondescript side street. They peeled away from the other workers and slipped into the shadows. Nate, is that really you? A grizzled man stepped out to greet them, his weathered face splitting into a grin. Caleb Frost, you ugly bastard, Nathan laughed, clasping his old friend's hand. I'd heard you were leading the resistance here. Caleb's smile faded. What's left of it? The Xenos have us outgunned and outnumbered. We're barely hanging on. He eyed Saul warily. Who's this? Saul Rosenthal, my partner on this op, Nathan replied, putting a slight emphasis on partner. We're here to take out Project Apex. Caleb's eyes widened. Apex? That Eliani doomsday weapon? It's here? Saul nodded grimly. And we need to destroy it before they can use it against the Alliance. Caleb led them through a maze of back alleys to a hidden resistance safe house. As they ducked inside, Nathan saw the desperate faces of the few free Novans left. Men and women, young and old, all bearing the scars of Eliani cruelty. The Xenos have enslaved most of the colony, Caleb explained, his voice tight with anger. Forced them to work on Apex. Some of our people tried to resist, but... He trailed off, his eyes haunted. Nathan's fists clenched. We'll make them pay for this, he growled. But first we need to infiltrate that research facility. Can you get us inside? Caleb hesitated, then reached into a battered footlocker and pulled out 2 Eliani security passes. These should get you past the checkpoints. But Nate, are you sure sabotage is enough? We need the Alliance fleet. We need... Nathan held up a hand. One step at a time, old friend, let us do our job, then we'll see about liberating Novus. Saul took the proffered passes, his face an unreadable mask. We should get moving. The longer we wait, the greater the risk of discovery. Nathan clasped Caleb's shoulder. Stay strong, we'll be back. Then he and Saul slipped out into the occupied streets once more. As they made their way toward the Apex facility, the true scope of the Eliani occupation became sickeningly clear. Novian civilians in chains, laboring under the watchful eyes and energy whips of their alien overseers. Gallows and pyres in the central square, the charred remains of the Resistance's early leaders still smouldering. Announcements blaring from speakers, proclaiming the glory of the Eliani Empire and the futility of defiance. Nathan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. These were his people, his home. Seeing them ground under the Eliani heel filled him with a rage that bordered on madness. His hand twitched toward the hidden plasma pistol at his hip. It would be so easy to start shooting, to make these Xenobastards pay in blood. Saul's hand clamped on his arm, his voice a harsh whisper. Not now, stick to the mission. Nathan forced down his fury with a shuddering breath. Saul was right. A firefight now would only get them killed and doom the Alliance. They had to destroy Apex. That was the priority. But as they approached the looming research compound, Nathan couldn't shake the growing doubt gnawing at his gut. The Eliani had already proven their brutality, their utter disdain for human life. What if this was a mistake? What if diplomacy was a fool's errand, and the only path to peace was to grind the Eliani beneath humanity's boot? He pushed the thought aside. They had a job to do. But as they presented their stolen passes to the guards and the gates of the Apex facility yawned open before them, Nathan made a silent vow. One way or another, Novus Prime would be free, and the Eliani would learn the true cost of making an enemy of the human race. Nathan and Saul crept through the sterile corridors of the Apex facility, their stolen uniforms blending seamlessly with the Eliani personnel bustling about. The air thrummed with a palpable tension, a sense of impending catastrophe that set Nathan's nerves on edge. As they approached the central control room, the true scope of Project Apex became horrifyingly clear. Banks of monitors displayed star maps and complex algorithms, each screen marking a different sector of Alliance space. This was no mere localized jammer, but a network of hyperspace disruptors, capable of crippling human ships across entire swathes of the galaxy. Nathan swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he reached for the concealed explosives in his pack. Saul shot him a warning look, then tilted his head toward a pair of Eliani technicians huddled over a console, their voices low and urgent. Test firing sequence initiating in 3 standard hours. Target locked. Human refugee convoy, Sector 7G. Projected casualties? Total annihilation of enemy vessels. Estimated 10,000 humans terminated. Nathan's blood ran cold. 10,000 lives snuffed out in an instant. Innocent families fleeing the war, slaughtered by this abomination of Eliani science. He turned to Saul, his voice barely a whisper. We have to warn them. Get a message to the Alliance. Evacuate those ships. Saul's grip on his arm was like iron. Absolutely not. We complete the mission, no deviations, too much is at stake. Nathan wrenched free, his eyes blazing. Those are civilians out there, women and children. We can't just let them die. And if we tip our hand, the Eliani will know we're here. They'll tighten security and we'll lose our shot at Apex. Is that what you want? The two men glared at each other, years of bitter history boiling to the surface. Nathan's jaw clenched as he remembered the mission that had claimed his father's life, the mission where Saul had given the order to leave good men behind. You never change, do you? Nathan snarled. Always willing to sacrifice others for the greater good, just like you sacrificed my father. Saul's face darkened. I made a call, the hard call, to save the mission. Your father understood that. He died a hero. He died abandoned by his commander, because of you. Nathan's fist lashed out, catching Saul across the jaw. The other man staggered back, then lunged forward with a growl. They grappled in a silent, vicious struggle, the fate of thousands momentarily forgotten in the heat of their own vendetta. The sudden tramp of boots in the corridor snapped them back to the present. An Eliani patrol, weapons at the ready, sweeping the facility for any signs of treachery. The two humans froze, their quarrel instantly subsumed by the need to survive. Nathan held up a hand, 3 fingers splayed. Saul nodded, sliding a wicked-looking blade from his boot. As the guards rounded the corner, the human operatives struck with ruthless efficiency. Nathan dropped the first with a precise chop to the throat, his alien windpipe crushed. Saul hamstrung the second, then silenced his gurgling scream with a slash across the neck. In seconds, the threat was neutralized, the bodies dragged out of sight. Nathan and Saul stood panting, the adrenaline still surging through their veins. Their eyes met, a grudging respect mingled with the simmering resentment. "We finish this," Saul said, his voice flat. "Then we settle our score." Nathan gave a tight nod. "For now we put it aside, for the mission." They turned back to the task at hand, rigging the stolen explosives with practiced efficiency. But even as he worked, Nathan couldn't shake the image of those doomed refugee ships hurtling blindly towards their destruction. He had sworn to protect humanity from the Eliani threat, but at what cost? How many innocent lives was he willing to sacrifice in the name of victory? As he armed the final charge, Nathan made a silent promise to himself. If they survived this, if they made it back to Alliance space, he would find a way to save those civilians. Orders be damned, he would not let them become just another casualty of this endless war. For now he had a job to do. Project Apex had to burn, and the Eliani with it, and God help any Xeno bastard who stood in his way. As Nathan and Saul finished rigging the explosives, they exchanged a tense nod. The job was done, now they just had to get out alive. "I'll set the detonator," Saul said, his voice low. "You get to the perimeter, try to warn that convoy." Nathan hesitated, the old resentment warring with the urgency of the moment. But there was no time for grudges now. Too many lives hung in the balance. "Don't wait for me," he said gruffly. "If things go sideways, blow this place to hell." Saul's jaw tightened, but he nodded. They clasped hands briefly, a gesture of solidarity despite their troubled history. Then they were moving, slipping out of the control room and splitting up to navigate the maze of corridors. Nathan's heart pounded as he made his way towards the outer gates. The stolen uniform chafed against his skin, a constant reminder of how deep in enemy territory he was. He kept his head down, trying to blend in with the Eliani personnel rushing about. He was just steps from the perimeter when a hand clamped down on his shoulder, spinning him around. Nathan found himself face to face with Craxon, the alien's eyes widening in recognition. "You," Craxon snarled, "the human spy." Nathan reacted on instinct, slamming his palm into Craxon's nose. But the Eliani warrior barely flinched, his enhanced physiology absorbing the blow. He lashed out with a punch that sent Nathan reeling, stars exploding across his vision. They grappled in a brutal clash, Nathan's human tenacity pitted against Craxon's alien strength. The Eliani was fast, far faster than any opponent Nathan had faced before. His blows rained down like hammers, driving the breath from Nathan's lungs. But Nathan fought with the desperate fury of a man who had everything to lose. He ducked under Craxon's swing and tackled him around the waist, driving him back against an electrical panel. Sparks flew as they crashed into the delicate machinery, and Craxon convulsed as the current surged through his body. The lights flickered and died as the base's power grid shorted out. Alarms blared, adding to the sudden chaos. Nathan staggered to his feet, leaving Craxon twitching on the floor. He had to move now before the backup generators kicked in. He burst out of the compound, the cool night air a blessed relief after the claustrophobic corridors. The darkened streets of the occupied colony stretched before him, the Eliani presence muted in the confusion. Nathan ran, his lungs burning, until he reached the Resistance safe house. Caleb was waiting, his face tight with worry. What happened? The whole city just went dark. "No time," Nathan panted. I need to warn a refugee convoy before the Eliani weapon destroys them. Can you get a message out? Caleb shook his head grimly. Eliani jamming is still up, nothing's getting through. Nathan slammed his fist against the wall, frustration and desperation warring within him. Those civilians, those families, they had no idea what was coming, and he was powerless to warn them. Unless... A crazy idea took root in his mind. It was reckless, borderline suicidal, but it was the only way. I need a ship, he said, the plan taking shape even as he spoke. Something fast with a hyperdrive. Caleb's eyes widened. You're not thinking... I have to warn them in person. It's the only way. But the mission, your partner... Saul can handle the detonation. Nathan's voice was grim. This is on me. I won't let those people die. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. There's a small starport on the outskirts for Eliani supply ships. You might find something there, but Nate, it's a hell of a risk. Nathan's jaw tightened. I don't have a choice. I swore to protect humanity from the Eliani, no matter the cost. He gripped Caleb's shoulder, a silent farewell. Then he was gone, slipping into the night once more. As he made his way towards the starport, Nathan's mind raced. He was leaving Saul behind, abandoning the mission. If the Apex facility wasn't destroyed, if the Eliani weapon remained operational, the consequences would be catastrophic. But he couldn't let those refugees be slaughtered. Not when he had a chance, however slim, to save them. He would just have to trust that Saul would finish the job, that Project Apex would burn, even as Nathan flew towards an uncertain fate. One way or another, the Eliani would learn the true strength of human resolve, and Nathan would be the one to teach them, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Nathan burst into the Resistance hideout, his heart pounding. Caleb looked up from a console, his face grim. I've prepped a ship for you, Caleb said, leading Nathan to a small hangar. Fast and maneuverable, with a Class 3 hyperdrive, should get you to that convoy in time. Nathan nodded his thanks, climbing into the cockpit. But as he began the ignition sequence, alarms blared through the compound. Caleb paled, checking a security feed. Eliani forces closing in fast. They must have had an informant in our cell. Plaster fire erupted outside, the Resistance fighters engaging the attackers. Nathan hesitated, torn between his mission and his loyalty to his comrades. Caleb saw his indecision and shook his head. Go, Nate, save those civilians. I'll buy you as much time as I can. Nathan clasped his friend's hand, a lump in his throat. I'll come back for you, Caleb, I swear it. Caleb smiled sadly. Just make sure my sacrifice counts for something. With that, he grabbed a rifle and ran to join the battle. Nathan fired up the engines, the ship humming to life around him. As he lifted off, he saw Caleb and the rebels making a valiant last stand against the Eliani onslaught. Blaster bolts crisscrossed the hangar, felling humans and aliens alike. Then a plasma grenade detonated, consuming Caleb in a ball of searing energy. Nathan cried out in anguish, watching helplessly as his friend was cut down. Grief and rage warred within him, but he forced it down. He had a job to do. Caleb's sacrifice would not be in vain. Nathan gunned the thrusters, blasting out of the hangar and into the night sky. He pushed the ship to its limits, the stars blurring into streaks of light as he raced to reach the convoy. Meanwhile, back at the Apex facility, Saul crouched in a maintenance shaft, attaching the final detonator. His comlink crackled with static, Nathan's voice barely audible. Saul, Eliani forces, and Caleb's dead. Heading for convoy. Saul cursed under his breath. The mission was unraveling fast. He had to finish this and get out, link up with Nathan before... A hiss of hydraulics cut through his thoughts. Saul spun, finding himself face to face with Craxon and a squad of Eliani soldiers, weapons trained on him from all sides. Saul slowly raised his hands, his mind racing. There was no way out, no clever escape. This was it. Craxon stepped forward, his eyes glinting with triumph. Did you really think you could sabotage our greatest weapon, human? Your species is so predictable, so easily manipulated. Saul forced a defiant grin. You're too late, Kraxon. Apex will be space dust soon, and your precious empire will follow. Kraxon chuckled, a cold and mirthless sound. Foolish to the end. The refugee convoy was never our true target. As we speak, your Alliance battle group is massing in the Taurin system, preparing a futile attack on Novus Prime. Saul's blood ran cold. The implications crashed over him like a wave. The Apex test, the leaked intel, it was all a feint, designed to draw out the human fleet. And Nathan was flying headlong into the trap, unaware that the real danger lay ahead. Saul met Kraxon's gloating gaze, a cold dread settling in his gut. For the first time in his long career, he had no plan, no clever stratagem. All he could do was watch and wait as the fate of the war hung in the balance, and pray that somehow, against all odds, Nathan would see the deception in time. Nathan's heart raced as his ship hurtled through the void, the refugee convoy growing larger in his view screen. He punched the comms button, hailing the lead vessel. Convoy Alpha, this is Nathan Ryder of Alliance Intelligence. You are in imminent danger. The Eliani are preparing to test a new weapon on your fleet. I repeat, you must scatter immediately. There was a crackle of static. Then a wary voice responded. This is Commander Voss. How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Nathan opened his mouth to argue, but a glint of metal caught his eye. An Eliani frigate, sleek and predatory, was closing fast on the convoy's position. Commander, you have an Eliani ship inbound. It's a scout here to observe their weapon test. You need to go evasive now. Voss hesitated a moment longer, then barked orders. The refugee ships began to maneuver, splitting formation in an attempt to present less of a target, but it was too late. A shimmering field of energy erupted from the Eliani frigate, engulfing the convoy ships. Their engines flickered and died, leaving them adrift and powerless. Nathan watched in horror as the scout ship swung about, lining up its guns on the helpless refugees. But Nathan's own craft, small and agile, remained unaffected by the disruption field. In a flash of inspiration, he gunned the thrusters, putting himself between the Eliani ship and its prey. The frigate opened fire, plasma bolts slamming into Nathan's shields. The small ship shuddered under the onslaught, alarms blaring in the cockpit. Come on, hold together, Nathan muttered, diverting all power to the forward deflectors. Shot after shot pounded his vessel, the shields straining to absorb the tremendous energy. On the bridge of the Eliani ship, Kraxon watched the drama unfold with cold amusement. The puny human thought he could stand against the might of the Eliani Empire. It was almost admirable in a foolish way. Concentrate fire on that defender, Kraxon ordered. I want to see how long he lasts. The weapons officer complied, the full fury of the frigate's guns now focused on Nathan's lone ship. In the cockpit, Nathan gritted his teeth as the barrage intensified. His shields were failing, the hull integrity dropping with each volley. It was only a matter of time. But he had bought the convoy precious minutes, and that might make all the difference. Light years away on the surface of Novus Prime, Saul Rosenthal knelt in the dirt, a ring of Eliani guards around him. Kraxon stood before a large view screen, watching the distant battle with a triumphant smile. Your friend is brave, human, but bravery alone cannot save him or those refugees. They will be the first to feel the power of Project Apex, and then your precious Alliance fleet will follow. Saul's eyes were fixed on the screen, on the image of Nathan's ship shielding the convoy with his own body. In that moment, he saw not a rival, but a brother in arms. A man who, like him, would give everything to protect the innocent. The weight of the detonator was heavy in Saul's hand. He knew what had to be done. In a burst of desperate strength, Saul surged to his feet, throwing off his captors. He held the detonator high, his thumb hovering over the trigger. Kraxon spun, his eyes widening in realization. No. Saul smiled, a grim and defiant smile. For humanity, he whispered. And pressed the button. A series of massive explosions ripped through the Apex facility. the shockwaves reverberating through Nathan's small ship. He watched in awe as the hyperspace disruptors crumbled, the chain reaction consuming the entire base in a fiery inferno. The flames painted the night sky an angry orange, a testament to Saul's ultimate sacrifice. In the void above Novus Prime, the disruption field around the convoy flickered and died. One by one, the ship's systems came back online, engines humming to life once more. Nathan didn't hesitate. His fingers flew across the weapons console, locking onto the Eliani frigate. A salvo of missiles streaked from his ship, slamming into the enemy vessel's hull. Explosions blossomed along its length, atmosphere venting from gaping wounds. The frigate listed, its weapons falling silent. It hung in space, a lifeless husk, as the convoy ships pulled away to safety. Nathan slumped back in his chair, exhaustion and relief washing over him in equal measure. His comms crackled, the convoy commander's voice filling the cockpit. "Ryder, I don't know how you did it, but you saved a lot of lives today. We owe you a debt we can never repay." Nathan managed a weary smile. "Just doing my job, Commander. Get your people to safety and stay alert. This fight is far from over." As if on cue, a priority message from Alliance Command flashed across his screen. Nathan's eyes widened as he read the contents. The Eliani battle group was on the move, bearing down on the massing human fleet. Without the element of surprise, the human forces were in for a brutal slugging match. Nathan plotted a course to rendezvous with the fleet, his jaw set with determination. Saul had given his life to destroy Project Apex. Caleb and the Resistance had bought this chance with their blood. He would see this through, no matter the cost. As he approached the mustering point, the scale of the coming battle became clear. The human battle group stretched out before him, a vast armada of warships and carriers. But arrayed against them was an even more imposing sight. The Eliani fleet, a seemingly endless expanse of alien metal, bristling with weapons. Nathan's comms pinged, the face of a grizzled human admiral appearing on his display. The man's eyes were tired, but there was a glint of respect in them as he addressed Nathan. "Son, Alliance Command has briefed me on your actions. You've done a hell of a thing giving us a fighting chance. But this battle is no place for a lone fighter. Leave this to us and get yourself to safety." Nathan shook his head, memories of Saul and Caleb flashing through his mind. Their sacrifices, their unwavering dedication in the face of impossible odds. He couldn't turn his back on that, not now. "With respect, Admiral," Nathan replied, his voice steady with conviction, "I am exactly where I need to be." He angled his ship towards the front lines, ready to stand alongside his brothers and sisters in arms. Come what may, he would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. He would be the shield that guarded the innocent, the sword that struck down the oppressors. For he was human, and he would not yield. Nathan punched the thrusters, sending his nimble ship hurtling into the fray. The space around him was a maelstrom of fire and metal as human and Eliani ships traded volleys of plasma and missiles. Nathan jinked and weaved through the chaos, his eyes narrowed in concentration. An Eliani fighter screamed towards him, its guns blazing. Nathan juked hard to port, the shots sizzling past his cockpit. He snapped off a burst from his own cannons, stitching a line of holes across the fighter's wing. It spun away, trailing smoke and debris. "One down," Nathan muttered, already searching for his next target. He saw a human frigate, its shields flickering under a barrage from an Eliani cruiser. Nathan dove towards the attacker, unleashing a salvo of torpedoes. They slammed into the cruiser's flank, blossoming into fireballs that sent shockwaves rippling across its hull. The cruiser's guns fell silent, its power diverted to damage control. The human frigate seized the opening, hammering the Eliani ship with its main batteries until it split apart in a silent explosion. All around Nathan, similar dramas played out as the two fleets clashed. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a desperate ferocity, knowing that the fate of their worlds hung in the balance. But for every Eliani ship they destroyed, they lost two of their own. The alien vessels were simply too powerful, their weapons too advanced. Nathan watched in helpless rage as a human destroyer, its hull breached in a dozen places, erupted in a blaze of nuclear fire. Then through the tumult he spotted a familiar shape, a massive dreadnought, its hull encrusted with weapon emplacements, Kraxon's flagship. Nathan felt a surge of hatred. This was the ship that had led the assault on Novus Prime, that had tested the apex weapon on helpless refugees. If he could take it out, throw the Eliani command into disarray. He didn't hesitate. Nathan gunned his engines, rocketing towards the dreadnought. Immediately its point defense guns swiveled to track him, filling the void with a lattice of plasma fire. Nathan rolled and dodged, pushing his ship to its limits. Shots grazed his shields, making his cockpit shudder and sparks fly from overloaded circuits. But he didn't slow down. He was close now, close enough to see the dreadnought's bridge view screen, to imagine Kraxon's startled face as Nathan bore down on him. Nathan's finger tightened on the trigger, a millisecond from launching his torpedoes straight into that smug visage. And then the world turned white. A plasma blast, a direct hit. Nathan's ship bucked like a wounded animal, alarms shrieking in his ears. He fought with the controls, trying to stabilize, but it was no use. A wing was gone, sheared clean off by the shot. He was spinning now, the stars wheeling crazily outside his canopy. But through the blur he could still see his target, could still make out the dreadnought's bridge growing larger and larger in his sights. With a final effort, Nathan wrenched his nose up, aiming the flaming wreckage of his ship straight at that hated view screen. Kraxon's face swam before him, contorted in anger and fear. "This is for Sol," Nathan whispered through gritted teeth. "For Caleb, for everyone your kind has hurt." He closed his eyes, bracing for the end. For a blinding instant he felt a searing heat, heard the screech of twisting metal. And then nothing, no impact, no oblivion. Nathan opened his eyes, blinking in confusion. He was in a hangar bay, but not one he recognized. The walls were curved and organic-looking, the architecture completely foreign. A figure was approaching, tall and slender, wrapped in shimmering robes. It spoke, its voice melodic and soothing, in flawless English. "Greetings, Nathan Jones. I am Ambassador Xyloth of the Galactic Council. We've been watching your conflict with great interest, and we believe it's time for us to intervene." Nathan blinked, his mind reeling as he tried to process the sudden change in his surroundings. The organic curves of the alien hangar bay were a stark contrast to the utilitarian lines of human ships he was used to. Ambassador Xyloth stood before him, his posture regal and his expression serene. "I don't understand," Nathan said, his voice hoarse from the strain of battle. "Why intervene now? Why not earlier, before so many lives were lost?" Xyloth inclined his head, a gesture that seemed to convey both acknowledgement and regret. "The Galactic Council has a policy of non-interference in the affairs of developing species. We believe that each civilization must find its own path, make its own choices, and learn from its own mistakes." Nathan felt a flare of anger. "So you just watched as the Eliani slaughtered us, as they enslaved entire colonies and tested weapons on civilians?" "It was not an easy decision," Xyloth said, his tone even. "But your actions and the actions of those like Saul Rosenthal and Caleb Frost have shown us that humanity possesses a rare quality, a willingness to sacrifice for others, to fight against impossible odds for what you believe in." Nathan thought of Saul, detonating the charges to save the fleet, of Caleb, buying time with his life to allow Nathan to escape. The anger drained out of him, replaced by a profound weariness. "So what now?" he asked. "What does the Council want from us?" "We offer you a choice," Xyloth said. "Withdraw from this conflict, and we will ensure a peaceful resolution with the Eliani. You have our word that your colonies will be safe and that the Eliani will face consequences for their actions." Nathan's heart leaped at the prospect of peace, but then he remembered the determined faces of the human admirals, the grim resolve of the soldiers he'd fought beside. "And the alternative?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Continue to fight," Xyloth said, "and face the consequences alone. The Council will not intervene further. Nathan closed his eyes, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. He thought of the lives already lost, the lives that could be saved if he accepted the Council's offer. But he also thought of the principles they were fighting for, the right to determine their own destiny, to stand up to aggression and tyranny. "I appreciate your offer," Nathan said, opening his eyes. "But this isn't my choice to make. I need to talk to my superiors. Let them make the call." Xyloth nodded, as if he had expected this response. "Very well, I will return you to your ship, but do not delay too long in your decision. The offer will not remain open indefinitely." Before Nathan could respond, the bright light enveloped him again. He felt a moment of disorientation, and then he was back in the cockpit of his damaged fighter, adrift among the wreckage of the battle. He checked his sensors, marveling at what he saw. The Eliani fleet was in full retreat, their ships limping away from the human battle group. The dreadnought that had been Kraxon's flagship was now a shattered hulk, spilling debris and bodies into the void. His comm crackled to life, the voice of the human admiral filling the cockpit. "Jones, is that you? Where the hell have you been?" Nathan took a deep breath, trying to organize his racing thoughts. "Sir, I have a message from the Galactic Council. They're offering to mediate a peace with the Eliani if we agree to withdraw." There was a long pause on the other end. Nathan could almost hear the gears turning in the Admiral's head, weighing the offer against his pride and his duty. Finally, the response came. "We appreciate the Council's offer, but we cannot accept. We fought for our right to determine our own fate, and we will not surrender that right now. The Eliani made their choice, and we have made ours." Nathan closed his eyes, a mix of emotions swirling within him. Relief that the fight would continue, sorrow for the lives that would be lost, and a grim determination to see this through, no matter the cost. "I understand, sir," he said. "I'm with you to the end." As the comlink cut off, Nathan stared out at the stars, at the retreating Eliani ships. They had won a great victory today, but he knew it was just the beginning. The Eliani would be back, with new weapons and new strategies, and beyond them, the galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers. But for now he allowed himself a moment of pride in his fellow soldiers, in the indomitable human spirit that had carried them this far. They had fought for their place among the stars, and they would keep fighting as long as it took. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.